It's a brand new week here in our studios. Thank you so much for joining us. We hope that you're enjoying the last week of the month, salary week for some, and I'm sure that the excitement is gearing up. Welcome to Breakfast Central. For the next 2 hours, we're going to be looking at some of the biggest stories happening around the country. I am Olive MOD.
And I am Osaogi Ogbon, welcoming you as well to Monday morning's edition of Breakfast Central. Welcome to the new week. Remember that you can be a part of the conversations. Simply tweet at News Central TV. Share with us breaking news stories from whichever part of Nigeria or the continent that you might be watching us from this morning. And also remember that you could call the phone line sometime in the 8 o'clock hour and share your thoughts with us on the stories that we will be dealing with. It's a very interesting way to wrap up the week with loads of conversations that we have for you this morning. Pretty, important to start with the conversation on, I think I saw it on the Business Day newspapers yesterday, where it's saying that we might be taking baby steps, into a dictatorship. I can't remember the way it was framed, but there seemed to be a picture of the president, a caricature picture of the president holding a whip, and then, of course, there was a man who was, held in shackles there with a pen and a paper. I think it was trying to say that the Tinubu administration seemed to be very, very reacting very, very terribly towards criticism and towards journalism, with the arrest that we've heard about lately by the Nigerian security agencies. Olive?
Yes, very important conversation. In fact, there are several headlines. One of the headlines I saw was how President Tinubu is making use of DSS and the police to effect arrests on journalists. There are several names that come to mind. Very recently, it was the Soyinka gentleman. But I think the big one that everyone has been talking about is Isaac, the one who goes by the handle PDOM Nigeria, and how he was arrested by members of, the state's, the police force. Now, detailing the account of what happened was quite chilling. David Hundeyin was one who raised the alarm, talking about how they tried to impersonate a relative and use the PDOM Nigeria account to try and start a conversation with David. And David just sensed that there was something wrong from the way the person was conversing, gave the person a deadline and said, within the next 5 minutes, record a 5-minute video of yourself telling me who you are, who took PDOM Nigeria. And when he gave him that deadline, or him or her, whoever was behind the screen, nothing could be done. And then they kept sending fake access codes, login details of PDOM Nigeria, and all of that started making him feel like something was off. And the moment they eventually got the right password, they sent him the right password, and he tried to log in, he realized that they were also at the same time trying to hack his WhatsApp and all his other numbers. And putting 20 together, he came to the conclusion that law enforcement agents were behind the, will I call it kidnap, but the arrest of PDOM Nigeria. At the time, it was treated as a kidnap because nobody knew exactly where they were. So after making a lot of noise, now the police has come out to say that they are the ones with this person. And, it brings to mind the question about the due process of arrest and how we cannot cure what they may call illegality, or you can't cure illegality with another illegality. If you think that somebody has broken a law, the way that you would ensure that that is being handled is by bringing them before a court of competent jurisdiction. Not the allegations that we're hearing of him not being afforded access to a lawyer. Everyone, according to the right of the right enshrined in the Constitution, has a right to fair hearing. The Constitution affords you the right to a lawyer, regardless of what it is that you did. You deserve your day in court, and you deserve legal representation. So if it is true that the police is denying him access to his lawyers, then that is uncalled for, that is highly illegal, and that should be condemned. We can't be acting like we're some nation that has no respect for the rule of law. I mean, yes, they say that we do not have respect for the rule of law, but it's becoming too blatant and too in your faces, right? And it's beginning to look somewhat targeted with it being a journalist, and that's not a good look for our country.
I mean, I would expect that the police spokesperson will address these claims. I know that, he did put out a message, or there was a message that seemed to be from him, saying that, yes, the individual behind the account, PDOM Nigeria, was arrested in Rivers State in Port Harcourt.
Right.
The problems, that I mentioned here really is not with the person's arrest. Anybody
the
could be
mode.
arrested. It's the way that it was allegedly done. It is the way that it was allegedly has been allegedly kept, in solitary confinement, according to what it was said, for 6 days without legal representation and many other things. So I feel like it's an opportunity that has arisen for these things to be addressed, and for more questions to be asked, about his arrest. He was charged. I believe that I think I saw that he was charged with cyber crimes and a couple of other things, and giving very, very stringent
yes.
Bail
Bail
requirements,
terms,
basically.
exactly, and those terms would most likely be impossible to meet from what it looks
so
like.
I mean, I don't like to. I would like to give the Nigerian police tiny benefit of doubt to say, okay, maybe there was actually a reason behind his arrest. What we just don't know if there was a warrant for his arrest, and if the due process was followed, like you've said. I think criminal justice act also says that you shouldn't keep a person for more than 48 hours without charging them to court.
That's why there's
obviously
no what did you call? You give them a benefit of doubt. That's why there's no
That's
benefit
what I'm
of
saying.
doubt. Because they have done it.
I want, because they would always have a response to some of these charges or some of these accusations. So when this police spokesperson does respond, these are some of the things that I believe that should be asked. It's a good thing that, of course, it is part of the conversation nationally, and everybody then knows where he is. Because if you remember a man, Dadiata, who, of course, went missing in 2016 or 2019, until date has still not been heard of or been found. Nobody wants a repeat of that. But I want to quickly say two things. One of them is, with regards blaming President Tinubu. So I don't think that it is the president himself. I feel like what has happened is that there is now a process that is now the norm, that is set in motion in those places where security agencies feel the need. There's like an automatic system where they feel the need to always protect the presidency or whoever is president from criticism. They seem to have misunderstood their role, which is, of course, to maybe work hand in hand with investigative journalists, work hand in hand with journalists themselves. What they seem to have understood as their role now is that they should protect the presidency and protect those who are in high echelons of power from persons and from criticism, including investigative journalism. So even if President Tinubu is not even aware, even if nobody in government is aware of this person's arrest or anything, security agents themselves will act because there's already that system that has been set in motion.
Yes.
That's the way that they understand it. That once the president starts to criticize the government, you immediately start to target him. And that's why we have found ourselves in a situation where when a journalist unearths something shocking, right? The mindset of the average Nigerian is
this person is in trouble.
Exactly.
Like,
the mindset of the average Nigerian
that?
is not that, the government is going to take action and immediately investigate this thing that has been unearthed. If you remember Fisher Sheyombo's revelations on the Nigerian Customs Service, the reaction of the average Nigerian's mindset is that you better go into hiding because they're going to come for you.
I know what is very shocking and very sad about all of this. Yet again, this is why Nigerians will say that they're not really sure about the way justice is being fought for. Because if you say that you can find out the destiny or the location of Bristol Isaac, Terminal Bay Ferry, that's a PDOM Nigeria. If you can find out his location, why can't you find out the location of Yahaya Bello, who is seemingly in arrest? There's so many who is seemingly hiding.
Bandits, the kidnappers, the bandits.
If you can find
Yahaya
these
Bello
people,
is not even...
I mean, it's quite interesting. But I'm hoping that these are conversations that come to the fore. Even as the Nigerian Bar Association Week starts today, it's a lot of conversations that they'll be highlighting. And I'm hoping that the way that the rule of law has been, toppled, the rule of law has been disobeyed, has not really been kept. I'm hoping that these are the conversations that will be highlighted, but not just talked about, that there will be rules of implementation or modes of implementation at the Nigerian Bar Association. But we'll come back to talk more about this. Let's share with you what our top stories this morning are. Southeast missing as NELFUND disburses 2.9 billion to 19 universities. We're joined by the MD of NELFUND this morning to talk about that. We'll be looking at the Shi'ite attack, police officers killed and others injured in Abuja. That was a very hot story this weekend. We'll be analyzing the state of the nation, joined by Frank Shaibu, who will be looking at different conversations this morning. FCT Minister declares park and pay scheme illegal and will be reviewing the newspaper front pages with you, opening the phone lines as well. Join us for Breakfast Central, but now let's bring the breakfast headlines.
The FCT police has confirmed an attack by the proscribed Islamic Movement of Nigeria, popularly known as the Shi'ite group, on some personnel of the Nigerian police force attached to the FCT command at Wuse Junction by the traffic light. This was contained in a statement made available to the State Police Public Relations Officer, SP Josephine Ade. It was reported that 2 police personnel were killed, 3 left unconscious in the hospital, and 3 police patrol vehicles set ablaze. The proscribed organization attacked the police checkpoint unprovoked, wielding machetes, improvised explosive devices, and knives. Earlier, our correspondent Emmanuel Bagudu spoke with an eyewitness, Fatima Hassan, and reported on the incident.
Fatima Hassan witnessed as it happened. Of course, she mentioned it very clearly that she was on her own, and all of a sudden she saw the Shiite, the Exazaki Shiite protesters approaching the Wuse's on 6th Center. And of course, they are being sent back by the police officers, but they resisted the police officers, and it resulted in a shootout. And of course, this resulted to, the alleged killings. Of course, the statement was released by the police just a few minutes ago that some police officers were killed in the encounter. Of course, this is the blood. These are the bloodsheds, blood being spilled as a result of the event. And of course, this is a tear gas canister. This is one of the tear gas canister here. Of course, this is one of them. It's so bloody and making the whole city center so tensed up. Innocent citizens were, injured. We were yet to actually ascertain the level of damage done by these protesters. Yeah, and of course, there's another vehicle behind that, actually, a commercial vehicle that was also destroyed, with passengers who managed to escape with their life. But of course, the only record we have is the one that the police actually released to tell us who is involved, who is affected by this particular event.
Meanwhile, the Islamic Movement of Nigeria has dismissed claims by the FCT Police Command that its members attacked a police checkpoint, which led to the death of 2 police personnel, leaving 3 others critically injured. A member of the movement, Abdullahi Musa, spoke exclusive with News Central Television, saying that their members were attacked at the popular Wuse market in Abuja as they took part in their annual Arbaeen Trek, a religious activity performed by the movement. Musa says that the claims that their members carried machetes and other dangerous weapons are false and frivolous, and an attempt by the police to swing the narrative in their favor.
I'm reading a statement by the police lying against us that we attack checkpoint. Is there any checking point at Wuse Market? The station police and they open fire on people. They should know, go and explain how they kill their people if anybody died eventually. We have been doing a lot of our activities in FCT. We have never for once carried any machete. The highest things we carry is placard. Is placard weapon? They should explain this. How will you open fire on person? And this thing has to stop. The police must stop this. There was NSAS. NSAS ignited because of the police killing innocent people for protesting. Today, they are yet to stop. They open fire on us.
In the news, the Department of State Services has freed a journalist, Adejuwon Soyinka, hours after he was picked up at the Murtala Mohammed International Airport. As at the time of filing this report, the reason for Soyinka's early arrest on Sunday was unknown. It was, however, disclosed that the secret police seized Soyinka's travel passport. Soyinka, the regional editor of The Conversation Africa, was arrested around 5 a.m. upon arrival at the Lagos airport from the United Kingdom. And away from Nigeria, a drone strike in northern Mali has killed at least 15 civilians, including children. The strike, which occurred in the Tinzanute area near Algeria, has been blamed on the Malian army and Russian mercenaries from the Wagner group by separatist groups. The separatists claim that 21 civilians were killed, including 11 children, while a local politician has confirmed that at least 15 civilians lost their lives. This latest incident highlights the escalating violence in the region where Mali's military, backed by Russian allies, is fighting against separatist and jihadist groups. And also a devastating landslide in northern Ethiopia's Amhara region has claimed the lives of 10 people, with 8 others seriously injured. The disaster occurred in the North Gondar zone, where heavy seasonal rains have caused widespread damage. Local officials report that 2,400 people have been displaced and are seeking shelter in social institutions. This latest tragedy comes after a series of landslides in Ethiopia, including a massive one in July that killed 229 people. The UN has warned of high risk of further flooding and landslides in the country. And now in North Africa, Egypt's President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi has warned against further escalation in the region as tensions between Israel and Lebanon intensify. In a meeting with U.S. General Charles C.Q. Brown, Sisi stressed the need to preserve Lebanon's stability and sovereignty. This comes after Israel launched airstrikes on Lebanon, citing a preemptive attack against Hezbollah. Egypt has urged restraint, while the U.S. has expressed support for Israel. Talks are planned in Cairo, led by CIA Chief William Burns, to negotiate a truce in the Gaza Strip. Sisi is calling for international action to support a ceasefire and hostage prisoner exchange. And that's all on Breakfast Headlines. When I move back to Breakfast Central, where we get into our top stories. I am Osaogie Ogbonwa.
Residents of Nigeria's federal capital, Abuja, have expressed different opinions following the announcement by the Minister of the Federal Capital Territory, Nyesom Wike, that the park and pay services have been suspended. News Central's Joshua Imarayi reports.
The announcement by the Minister of the Federal Capital Territory suspending the park and pay policy in Abuja.
So I called the Transport Secretariat, the mandate secretary, has come. Who introduced this park and pay? Unknown to us, there is an agreement between the secretariat and some people who say they are consultants. Consultant takes 80%, and the state government takes 20%. That's okay. Where is this money being paid? Nothing. That's okay. Come on, draft a statement and call the director of press. Send out a statement that the public should be aware that they call park and pay.
The announcement has sparked mixed reactions as some Nigerians see the suspension as a bold step towards curbing widespread extortion in Abuja, while others remain skeptical.
They are going with police, illegal police. They pay policeman 30,000 naira per day. Then they will hire a vehicle. They pay that driver 20,000 naira per day. They chain my uncle's vehicle here in Secretariat, which I beg 25,000 naira will come out from our pocket.
You seem to know all these things. Do you have facts?
Many of our friends, I say in Ministry of Education, many of our colleagues are friends here. We have contact with them.
The way they are doing things is totally illegally. You understand? I could remember last 2 weeks around that central area behind War College, Park and Pay just came and locked my car. When I came out from where I entered, I asked them what happened. They say you did not pay for ticket. I say, which type of ticket now? The time when I came, nobody was here.
Personally, I feel Park and Pay is not necessarily a bad policy. Those are the ways government raise revenue. But if the minister in his wisdom wants it eradicated, I think that's a step in the right direction, considering the hardship people are facing currently.
Abuja residents have commended the Minister of the Federal Capital Territory for the suspension of the park and pay policy. However, they are urging him to spread such reforms across all areas of the Federal Capital Territory. In Abuja, reporting for News Central, I am Joshua Imarai.
Now we're moving the conversation from Joshua to other talks this morning. The federal government's Committee on Crude Oil Sales to Local Refineries in Naira will meet to discuss the pricing of petrol from the Dangote Petroleum Refinery, set to commence sales next month. The committee will determine whether to pay subsidies or allow market price sales, which could be higher than current pump price. Oil marketers say the cost of Dangote petrol will be higher than current prices, making it tough for dealers to buy without government intervention.
The Nigerian National Petroleum Company Limited, NNPC, has been shouldering a heavy subsidy burden with a shortfall of 7.8 trillion naira in the first 7 months of this year. The government is exploring options to mitigate the subsidy burden, including the compressed natural gas initiative. And of course, these are some of the things that have, created conversations across Nigeria in the last couple of months, with Nigerians seeking clarity as to, first of all, what exactly the country hopes to achieve with the Dangote refinery, and also most of the confusion with regards to the NNPC lately. If you have followed the stories in the last long while, of course, the latest stories on the NNPC were the controversy concerning the OVH acquisition, which came up, about a week ago with
the allegations, by alleges.
Yeah, exactly.
And then the counter allegations or the denial by the NNPCL via their press release on X. So
absolutely.
It's just so many sides of the conversation, but it is important, of course, that we find some semblance of normalcy and some semblance of calm. But yes, like we did say, the dealings of the NNPC has been accused of a lot of its dealings being shrouded in secrecy, with Nigerians not quite knowing a number of the things that go on in there in terms of how much is being remitted to this federation account. And that's why for the longest time they've been asking, just like we say on, what's that thing about the National Assembly? I forgot, open NAS. Yeah, open NNPC as well. It's part of the conversations. But we're looking forward to the report or the conversations that will emanate from this, even as the federal government discusses petrol price. They said they weren't paying subsidy. We've realized now that the subsidy is still being paid. It's just not paid to marketers. It's paid to the NNPC.
But I think it's also, a thing that is leading towards, Nigerians having, or the federal government rather itself having some honesty, with Nigerians on what the price of petrol should be. So what is a price of petrol that is convenient for Nigerians at this time? If subsidy is completely removed, I've repeatedly said it here, that we will be paying more than 1,000 naira for a litre of petrol.
Which we already are paying in some cases, unfortunately.
I mean...
Maybe not from the direct filling stations.
No, I'm not talking about the black market sellers. I'm talking, the official selling price will be...
But I've seen some people on social media share that they're buying from filling stations almost at 1,000.
Because of the current crisis.
Right.
Because of the current petrol scarcity. Prior to the petrol scarcity, it was, less than 1,000 naira. The point is, this is the reason that the government, of course, had to find a way to create this shortfall payments, that they've described. They said it's not subsidy, it is, they're paying is this shortfall now? Yes.
Yes.
Because they definitely understand that Nigerians will not be able to stomach paying 1,100, 1,200, maybe 1,400 naira for a litre of petrol. There's no way that, that's going to happen. And so they've continued to help Nigerians to, of course, balance that out. And so what they are hoping to do now is have an understanding on what price of petrol would be convenient for Nigerians to pay to reduce the burden that the government has, with paying subsidy to the NNPC. Right now, the Nigerian government, is reportedly owing the NNPC trillions and trillions of naira that it has, of course, had to cover, so that the price of petrol will remain around between 600 and 800 naira in different parts of the country. But we need to have that conversation. The government needs to have a conversation with Nigerians and say, listen, this is where we are. If we truly want to remove subsidy and remove the burden that we have on our finances to continue to pay to the NNPC, then price of petrol will have to go up. But if we're not removing subsidy completely and we have to continue to, of course, pay off that balance to the NNPC, then, of course, this bill is going to continue to run into trillions of naira. Will the Dangote refinery bring any succor? I believe so. And so it must be supported. I remember that they talked about Port Harcourt refinery a while ago.
But the
and they've continued to, of course, to push that date forward. But if we have the Port Harcourt refinery, we have Dangote refinery, we have maybe Kaduna, maybe Warri refinery, also fully functional, will these reduce the burden on the Nigerian government, and of course maybe also reduce the price of petrol? Very likely. So these are things that the government needs to have an open conversation with Nigerians on. So we stop living in denial, that we're not paying subsidy when everybody can tell, obviously, that we're paying subsidy. It may not be going to oil marketers as they claim, but a subsidy is still being paid.
Subsidy is just 12 and a dozen different terminologies.
Exactly.
So yes, I completely agree with you in all that you've said. Also, I think it's important to, whilst many people agree with the fact that removal of subsidy might have been a very good policy, is it a very good policy now in Nigeria? What's the implementation like? Someone gave me an analogy yesterday saying, if I realize that I want to renovate the studio, for example, and I know that renovation of the studio is for the benefit of the studio, is for the benefit of the station, but I realize that in renovating the studio, I might have to keep some people out of the apartment, they're leaking roofs, and they don't have any alternatives. For now, will that be a good option? Leaving them out in the open. So I think we have to weigh the opportunity costs, the effect it's having on Nigerians, and be honest and clear with Nigerians. If the federal government had been very honest from the jump and said, look, we've done our own calculations, we've done our own impact assessment, and from our projections, the first 2 years are going to be really rough. These are some of the ways you will see how rough it will get. By the third year, we should start seeing improvements in these areas and that areas. And after giving us these projections, these calculated projections, we then start to see that the federal government on its own end is cutting down the cost of expenses. Like I always say, regardless of who ended up as the president of the country, I believe that we would have still had the same challenges that we're facing. However, Nigerians may have reacted differently because depending on who is in office, we may or may not have seen worse spending. So if you're saying that right now it's tough times for Nigerians, while still it's a lot of teething problems because these are new policies that have been implemented, and with the implementation of these policies, there'll be some measure of teething. On your own end as the government, how are you making sure that you're cutting cost of governance on your own end? Because we can't be having conversations about purchasing a new private jet and furnishing a $21 billion apartment and paying how many 90 billion naira for religious pilgrimage. So if the citizens are not seeing that the government on its own is tightening its belt, then it's very hard. It's why every slight thing looks suspicious to Nigerians.
There's the argument that there's nothing entirely wrong with paying subsidy. I've heard that argument before, and it did make a bit of sense. There's nothing entirely wrong with paying subsidy because governments across the world subsidize one thing or the other for their citizens. It could be power, it could be food, it could be water, it could be transportation. But governments across the world always somehow, some way carry a bit of weight for their citizens. And if we do that for Nigerians, and we make sure that we have seemingly cheaper energy, it would assist businesses, it would assist industrialization across the country. There's that argument. It's not entirely wrong. What we've failed to do over time is find some level of support for the country, which is to have functional refineries, or at least assist modular refineries to have some level of success, to at least reduce the dependency that we have in refining oil outside Nigeria. These are some of the things that I believe that we've gotten wrong. Have we also tried to make more money for the country by stopping the stealing of Nigeria's crude? Not very much. There's not been a lot of difference between Nigeria's crude production in the last 3, 4, 5, maybe even the last 10 years. We've had the same very, very poor statistics, and that means that the government doesn't seem to have taken actual decisive steps towards reducing the theft of Nigeria's crude and improving on our crude oil production so that we can, of course, make more foreign exchange. We can, of course, earn more in foreign exchange from the sale of crude. So, I mean, there's so many of these angles concerning Nigeria's crude oil and petroleum sector that we must have some level of honest discussions between the government and the people. And it is because, like you've said, there doesn't seem to be a lot of honesty. That's why it's difficult for Nigerians to trust when the government says, oh, just hold on for a little bit, or the government says that they're no longer paying subsidy, and then you find a couple of weeks later that they're actually paying subsidy. Or, of course, the government responds to the allegations from Atiku Abubakar on the OVH deal, where of course he's mentioned the president's relative, and of course, a business interest that may also be involved in these business dealings. It's really just a lack of trust that I can point out.
And this lack of trust, it's a very key problem. I don't know if we understand just how deeply the lack of trust that we have as a country for our government has eaten into the fabrics of our society, such that even when the government is seemingly making good progress, the citizens will not appreciate it. You're second-guessing everything because it almost feels like, can anything good come out of this? And I'll give you an example. We're going to talk about this much later. When the NELFUND announced that it had disbursed 2.9 billion naira, when NELFUND announced that it had disbursed 2.9 billion naira to universities, 19 universities, and then there was the conversation about how the Southeast universities were excluded. Yes, they've come out to, and we're going to hopefully have the MD of NELFUND join us shortly. And part of what they were saying was, it's not by geopolitical zones and the likes. But I think what I see there is just, again, the underlying trust deficits, because it just feels like Nigerians are, in a way, almost expecting foul play, almost expecting that its government doesn't have good intentions for her, such that even when something as decent, or something similarly decent to help life easier for the underprivileged Nigerian students is being launched or is being ruled out, when there is any slight discrepancy, everybody's antenna goes off, because it feels like we have seen this abuse or repetitive abusive pattern happen over and over again. Repetitive abusive pattern from a place of lack of trust. No trust between the government and the governed. So anything that they do, even when there is any measure of good intentions, Nigerians may not always see it at first because they do not trust the current administration.
Nobody should be blamed for the reactions Nigerians have.
I completely agree.
Southeast conversations more than the Nigerian government itself.
I agree, completely.
The Nigerian government itself has failed to handle issues concerning the Southeast well enough, and I'm speaking mostly from the former President Muhammadu Buhari, administration. They have failed to handle issues concerning the Southeast in a mature and in a good way, basically. And that's why we've continued to see a complete eroding of the trust between the citizens and government when it comes to the Southeast in the last couple of years. The last general elections made it even worse. The times when the government should have been saying things to unite the people, when it should have been calling out those who were trying to incite tribalism across Nigeria because of the elections, the government failed and failed woefully in that regard. And so when you see a spike in allegations and a spike in sensitivity concerning the Southeast, for example, now we're talking about the NELFUND conversation, it is not just the citizens that I would blame here. I would blame the government mostly for the role that it played and its failure to handle those issues when it was time to handle them. When the accusations were starting, you might like Nnamdi Kanu or not,
yes,
but when he started to throw those accusations back then, there's better ways that those situations could have been handled by the federal government that they failed to handle. And that's why we've seen a complete spike in the tensions between, you might say it's just online, but
no,
if it starts from there and it eventually gets into real life situations
we saw that a lot
between the
elections.
Southeasterners and other people.
And if we go
mostly
back to
because people wanted to win an election.
Yeah, if we go back to as recently as 3 weeks ago, when the Lagospedia handle was spewing hate across social media, there were a number of Nigerians that said this should not be allowed, and particularly I think it was brought to light when Alhaji Atiku Abubakar talked about it. And before then, a number of people were wondering, why has the government not yet spoken, not just even spoken, done something about this? Yes, Lagos State government dissociated themselves from Lagospedia, but why hasn't the person been uncovered? Why hasn't the person been arrested? They could easily locate and track where PDOM Nigeria was. PDOM Nigeria has been arrested. They've announced that PDOM Nigeria is with law enforcement. Why can't they find who is behind Lagospedia handle? Because this person was inciting hate against Igbo people. Yes, the government totally, said that they dissociate themselves from Lagospedia and they stood against bigotry. But whilst standing against bigotry, it's not just in words, it's in actions. Taking action and ensuring whoever was behind that handle is not just found, but is made to face the law. Because what you're doing is spewing hate and furthering a narrative that the Igbo people already have. Igbo people even say a number of times that they feel highly marginalized in, conversations that involve us as a nation. They don't feel like... We had a guest join us on the show, and we're talking about the protest and talking about how the Southeast has reacted to the protest. And part of the conversations was, they said the Igbo people had been protesting for the longest time, so why are you asking them to be a part of the protest now? So yes, I completely understand the feelings that the Southeasterners would have when they see a list like that. The reasons, I'm not the MD will come and speak, but they would say that it is the Southeastern universities that haven't followed due process. This is also to call out Southeastern universities, because there's always two sides to a story. If NELFUND is saying that Southeastern universities haven't done what they need to do, Southeastern universities, have you really done what you need to do? Or is it, again, another situation where we will just found it, talk about it, make a lot of noise, and then it's swept under the carpet, and we keep it pushing.
Anyway, we'll expand more on that conversation. We're going to be having the MD of NELFUND join us this morning to share his thoughts on the process so far, and of course, the accusations, about the Southeast being excluded from the fund. Stay with us. We'll be back after this short break.
As we fight against insecurity as a nation, let's head to Borno State and highlight the Civilian Joint Task Force, locally known as Yangora. It has emerged as a crucial component in the fight against Boko Haram insurgents and other antisocial elements. It was formed in 2013 by local youths, and this grassroots organization has grown significantly in response to the prolonged insurgency that has plagued the region for over 13 years. News Central's Umaru Kirawa provides an in-depth report of the struggle by the civilian JTF in peace building.
A child of necessity, as many will say, the civilian JTF, made up of youth known as Ngora, started in Maiduguri, the Borno state capital. The group became a key ally of the armed forces in the ongoing battle against Boko Haram.
Babu yanzu ya ragu tsakiyan dare na an muyi kira kuma suna zuwa mana
kayan abin ya kai police tasha to sai safiliyar GTN sun tashi sun magance wannan abu.
They help the military in intelligence gathering, and because they have clear knowledge of the geographical location, they lead the military to some kind of operations.
The military got reinforcement from a quarter they never anticipated. The youth also took on the battle alongside the military, and they were able to identify the nooks and crannies where the Boko Haram elements were hiding, and they were able to conquer many of them.
Despite the dangers they face, these brave young people continue to stand up against the insurgents, determined to bring peace and security to their homeland.
Dole ne muka jajirce mu ga mun tabbatar mu kyautata cewar tsaro a al'ummanmu, mu kyautata tsaro a garinmu, mu kyautata tsaro a addininmu, sannan mu goya wa jami'an tsaro baya.
Civilian JTF at all the time we are ready to support the government, not the government of Borno State, the government of Nigeria. As you can see, we have our men in Sokoto who are supporting the security agencies in fighting the bandits and others.
Mora! Yawwa muna na standby kowane lokaci. Ba dare ba rana. Daga yanzu har wayewan gari idon mu biyu ne. Kowa yake neman mu, ko aina ake neman mu, mu a shirye muke. Ba ma jira mu je gida mu shirya, kullun a ready muke. In kwana mu ta kare Allah ya riga ya rubuta.
Mu muna taimakawa jami'an tsaro, 'yan sanda, sojoji, immigration, custom. Ba wani abu ba saboda kasar mu ta samu zaman lafiya. Kuma wannan aikin mun shige shi ne wai ba dan a ba mu wani abu ba.
The then governor of Borno State, Kashim Shettima, now Nigeria's vice president, institutionalized the civilian JTF, supporting them with vehicles and a monthly pay, among others. And this has been sustained by the current government of Babagana Zulum.
When they make arrests, they know their limits. They hand over the suspects to the police or to the civil defense. And so far, they have maintained a very cordial relationship with all our security agencies. They are all happy with the support that the civilian JTF provides. And the Borno State government will continue
to support them in terms of equipment, in terms of uniform, and we are even recruiting more.
When the current administration take over, they now increase their monthly allowance from 15,000 naira to 30,000 naira.
Hawa Abdul Kadir, one of the female members of the civilian JTF, narrates her experience.
Wani aiki guda ɗaya da na yi da ban manta da shi ba, so wata yarinya da aka ɗauko min ita a galabaice haka aka kama ita kuma sannan da jinjira aka kama ita, wanda kuma ogana ne ya kama ita sai na yi solving ɗin yarinyan. Gaskiya na ɗan sha wahala kaɗan amma kuma alhamdulillah naga kuma yarinyan ta farfado yanzu ma har tana business nata.
The civilian JTF have been registered by the government, providing them with more support in the counter-insurgency drive.
The civilian JTF's deep-rooted knowledge of local terrain have made it an invaluable asset in counter-insurgency operations, helping to reclaim territories previously controlled by insurgents. Their untold bravery highlights the profound impact that local communities can have in conflict resolution. In Maiduguri for News Central, Umaru Kirawa.
A detailed report there by Umaru Kirawa. Now let's share you the conversations that we've had this morning, and then we can let you know what's still to come on Breakfast Central. All right, let's share with you what's coming up next on Breakfast Central. Coming up next, we have the Southeast missing as NELFUND disburses 2.9 billion naira to 19 universities. We have the newspaper front pages that we're reviewing with you, opening the phone lines as well, so you can call in and react. Which way Nigeria comes up this morning as well. Stay with us. Welcome back to Breakfast Central. Let's go through the papers with you. And the numbers to call are on your TV screen. We want you to be a part of the papers conversation this morning. But let's start with our first paper this morning on the front page of our first paper, which is the Punch newspaper, I believe. All right, let's see what the front page is. Daily Independent, I beg your pardon. On the front page of the Daily Independent newspaper, battle for 130-year-old First Bank may impact its fortune, says investors. Boardroom squabble threatens 350 billion naira recapitalization plan. Shareholders asked parties to sheath the sword. Differ on CBN's role. IGP hands over 20 rescued medical students to their VCs. We'll come back to talk about this as well. PDP crisis. Bode Judge urges gladiators to drop personal ambition. Serap asks minister governors to disclose details of Chinese loans and liabilities. Student loan scheme is for all, no one is excluded, presidency assures. Catholic bishop calls for return to regional system of government. More troubles for telcos, ISPs, as Starlink deepens operations in Nigeria. Shi'ite attack checkpoint in Abuja, kill 2 policemen, others in critical condition. Debt burden may impede Nigeria's drive to economic recovery. Okonjo-Iweala wants federal government to keep public debt within sensible limits. Tinubu's optimistic Nigeria will overcome its current challenges. These are the stories this morning on the Daily Independent. Let's head over to the next paper.
All right. This morning on the This Day newspapers, it says, at the NBA conference, Tinubu vows to protect rule of law, tolerate dissenting voices. Okonjo-Iweala expresses concern about slow pace of Nigeria's development. Lagos has more women in judiciary than any other state, says Sanwo-Olu. And also fuel scarcity persists in Lagos and others. Really biting fuel scarcity. And I don't know how much longer, really, that it's going to last. I thought that it had relaxed over the weekend, but, it doesn't seem to be. Also on the This Day newspapers this morning, bottom of your screen, police Shi'ite adherents in bloody clash in Abuja. Some officers dead, several others injured. Another very sad development there, with managing the crisis between, or managing rather, the Shiite processions in the Federal Capital Territory. We can also find here the 3rd coronation anniversary of the Olu of Warri, one of the pictures that you can see, actually the main picture that you can see on your screen there on the This Day newspapers. Top of the screen there, federal government moves to eliminate malaria, taps Dangote Otedola Elumelu to drive efforts to end scourge. Those are the major stories on the This Day newspapers this morning.
All right, let's head over to the next paper this morning. And on the front page of the Daily Trust, bandits abduct over 150 in Gobir, days after killing Emir. Remember, the Emir of Gobir was humiliated, I would say, and killed. He was killed after asking that the government step in to please pay his ransom. And he talked about having served the government for 40 years. And unfortunately, this was how he ended his life. Now, bandits have gone ahead to abduct over 150 in the same Gobir. This is sad and it's such a shame. IG hands over 20 rescued medical students to UNIMED and the VCs of the different universities. Tinubu others mourn as Emir of Ningi buried amid tears. Court freezes 32 bank accounts linked to end bad governance protest. 2 cops, trader killed as police Shiites clash in Abuja again. And that's all on the Daily Trust. Let's head over to our final paper.
The Daily Times newspapers comes up next. Final paper this morning says Nigeria sitting on ticking time bomb. Catholic bishops say future of Nigeria dependent on how challenges bedeviling her are tackled. End bad governance protest, court freezes 32 individuals and companies' bank accounts. Also, Tinubu should act on calls for new constitution, says Anyoku. Tinubu pledges to promote rule of law, tolerate dissenting voices. Also on the Daily Times, business optimism hits new low in July amid rising economic concerns, says the CBN. Article to federal government, explain why Oando got accelerated approval in Ajip ENI purchase. Slams Tinubu over subsidy scam, rights abuse. Demands release of detained whistleblower, I think the PDOM individual, PDOM Nigeria person. We're yet to receive federal government's rice. Citizens in Kaduna, Kano, and Katsina lament. Those are the major stories on the Daily Times newspapers this morning. And I think, just to remind everyone that the phones are available. You can join the conversation. Call us this morning and share your thoughts with us on these stories making headlines across the newspapers. One of them that I think, is pretty interesting that that I should, speak on is the very sad incident in the Federal Capital Territory with the Shiites. And I think I mentioned earlier that, in my opinion, I feel like, just like the IPOB situation, I think it's pretty similar to, to somehow, some way similar to the Shiites situation, and I feel like they have both been mismanaged by the Nigerian government. I feel like the seeming high-handedness, that the Nigerian government has used to manage to handle these groups has led to where we are today, where we've continued to see, extreme actions being taken or of good results being seen here with the death of these 2 policemen in procession. It's not the first time that we've seen policemen and Shiites clash in the Federal Capital Territory. Right from 2015, after that incident that happened in Zaria, where it was reported that 347, maybe up to 500 of their members were killed by the army in what, of course, the Nigerian government chose to describe as a clash between them, because they blocked the road that some soldiers were passing. Many people, including Amnesty International, have spoken completely against it, and called out the federal government for, that narrative or that story that was told to defend the killing of those people. Since then, there has been, of course, the tension that has emanated between the Shiites and the police in the Federal Capital Territory. Every now and then you hear that they are going on their, religious walks, in the Federal Capital Territory, and almost every single time that happens, you see that there is a clash between them and the FCT police. And I feel like it doesn't have to always be like that. I understand that they are a proscribed group, so maybe that's why the police always feels like they need to come out, and challenge them anytime that they're going on those walks. But both 2 wrongs don't make it right, as they say it. And so I would continue to appeal that there is a different way and a different approach to which these groups can be handled. The Shiite group and the IPOB and every other agitating group in Nigeria. There always should be a different approach towards handling them so that we don't always have tensions so high every time that they have these processions and every time that their names are mentioned. I would continue to blame the poor handling of these groups and the tensions, and the conversations concerning these groups by the Nigerian government as the reason that we've gotten this, in this direction today. It could have been handled a lot better. It could have been handled, with proper conversations and with proper negotiations, and at least with some understanding of what their grievances are. I feel like at some point there needs to be a proper conversation and investigation again into the incidents that happened in Zaria in 2015, where reportedly almost 500, if not more, of their citizens or their members were killed by the Nigerian army. Good morning. We have someone joining us. Great man. Good morning. Thanks for joining us. All right, good man. I hope that you can call us right back.
Yes. All right. I mean, you've really said, I think that's all, you've said all that needs to be said regarding that story. There's a way around tension when people have beliefs or, try to push for what they want, even though the government might not quite agree. There are ways we can find some form of a middle ground without having to be violent.
There always has to be a way that government can handle these things without it deteriorating into what it is today. And even after 2015, I remember I was still in the Southeast then, that there were still reports of them going on a procession, and we saw, allegedly, members of the Nigerian police firing live rounds, into their procession. Of course, they've always, every single time that there's a procession, not every single time, but many times when they have their processions or their walks, there's always some casualties. And I know that in the past we've heard reports of them, of their members also being or losing their lives, during their processions because of this same clash with the Nigerian security agencies. Right. Good morning, Elder David.
Thank you very much, man. Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you very much. Please go ahead.
What happened in Abuja is very unfortunate. These police officers are doing their job. If they are very religious in Nigeria, we should know that you have Christians, you have Muslims. You have the Fawsha, which is the religion of the black man. It's all over the world. Just like Judaism in Israel. Not like Hindus that is in India. Then the temple in China. Then what is it? We want religion now take us to ransom. We should be very careful. And why are they coming with the innocent police officer? They say they are protesting. They are not protesting. They have their right. Yes, everybody has a right to protest. Myself, I'm protesting too as another man. We should be very patient with this government. All right. And that's what I always say. I'm not campaigning for this government. I'm still telling you too that this government is still the best we have ever seen in 1999. And God will protect Nigeria. And God will protect you there. You will not see them. We have not seen them.
Elder David, thank you for calling.
Right to protect, but you should not do it.
Thank you very much for calling, Elder David. I'd like to just, before we wrap up the newspapers, just quickly touch on this story about the 20 medical students that have been rescued on the front page of the Daily Independent. The front page of the Daily Independent says 20 medical, IGP hands over 20 rescued medical students to their VCs. The Inspector General of Police yesterday revealed that the mastermind as well of the abducted 20 medical students in Boko, Benue State, while traveling to Enugu for Catholic Medical Students Conference, had been killed during the rescue operation. This was also on This Day newspaper. I'm taking that headline and also taking this update I'm seeing in This Day newspaper because I think there was a little bit of a misunderstanding as to what exactly happened. Was it a rescuing or was it that they sorted out themselves? Because I don't know if you saw the tweet where someone had mentioned that they had a family member there and they had to pay to get the family member out. We don't usually have a clear picture when there's been a kidnap and then the person is reunited with their family. It's almost like the procedure is shrouded in a lot of secrecy. It's almost like, oh, they're back, we thank God, and they don't really say much about it. So part of the criticism that was leveled against law enforcement was that you cannot say that you rescued them if their families paid the ransom and they came back to them. So tell us clearly, oh, no ransom was paid, we rescued them, and we were able to ensure that whoever were the masterminds have been arrested, which is exactly what the IGP has said. But we'll get back to that. We have a call from Nasarawa. Good morning, great man. Please go ahead with your comment.
Yes, good morning.
Morning, go ahead.
Thank you for having me this morning.
All right, thank you.
I want to appreciate all of you for your informative and narrative analysis for Nigerians.
Thank you very much, good man.
I so much love you people. And so my contribution this morning is just short. The issue is our security personnel are supposed to have gathered intelligence before these people will even invade. If we have, but in a case where we don't,
Seem to be struggling with your connection, great man.
the loss of
We are struggling with your audio. We apologize. We'll have to get the call disconnected.
Yeah.
But I think I heard him say something about insecurity and, part of the challenges, and they ought to have gathered intelligence. I don't know for which of the stories. Maybe it's for the medical situation.
Not just the medical situation.
But just generally.
Yeah. So there's a story on the Daily Trust this morning. The big story on the Daily Trust that says bandits abduct over 150 in Gobert. It's not the first time that we are seeing these types of numbers, but, it's a reminder of where we still are with regards our security infrastructure and our ability to tackle kidnapping in Nigeria. And, it's a good moment to ask yourself, what has changed? With regards fighting kidnapping. It takes not just, it takes a lot of logistics and a lot of confidence for an armed group to be able to kidnap 150 people. 150 people.
What sort of structure do they have put in place to be able to take away 150 people?
That's what I'm trying to express.
We're not talking, of course, one life is important, but 150 people, how many? That means they would have had much more people to maybe overpower them. What kind of ammunition did they have to carry to be able to? Anyway.
The point is, for you to pull off that, it means that there is some level of confidence in your ability to attempt it and to get away. Again, it just paints the reality of what the security situation is.
A level of confidence in not being caught.
Yeah.
Let's talk to
Good morning, Ayo.
Good morning.
Good morning. Please
Go ahead.
Yeah. Thank you very much, everybody, for contributing and for giving us this information this morning. I've been listening to what you have been saying this morning, and it's so sad that we're in this kind of situation today.
Thank you, Ayo. Go ahead.
These child issues have been known for years, and we have so many regimes come to board to come and govern us, and we can't call these people and ask them what is really the problem. This issue of child issue on the security issues, it should be something that there should be a round table between these people. Let it be a round table between these people. We should know what is really going on. If we are not happy seeing our policemen fall down, we are not happy seeing them, but they themselves, there's need for proper training of the policemen in our country. It's not everything you are violence on. Those people too are human. They have blood in their veins. If you continue to kill everybody, if you continue to fire or using ammunition on people, they will get triggered.
Right. Okay. Thank you very much, Ayo, for calling and sharing your thoughts on that. This is where we'll have to wrap up the newspaper reviews. We want to get into the next conversation. We're looking this morning at the students' loan and the allegations of the Southeast being excluded. We'll be joined by the MD of NELFUND after this break. President Bola Ahmed Tinubu's student loan initiative is indeed working or not? What do you think? Let's find out. According to Nigerian Education Loan Fund, NELFUND, over 2.9 billion naira has been allocated and distributed as loans for tuition fees to more than 27,000 students across 19 higher education institutions in Nigeria. However, none of these institutions are located in the Southeast, while at least one institution from each of the other 5 geopolitical zones is included.
Now, the federal government agency has explained why there are no students of any Southeast higher institution among the beneficiaries of its loans disbursed so far. According to the agency, no institution from the region has responded to his request for verification of students for the disbursement. Now, joining us is the Managing Director, Nigerian Education Loan Fund, NELFUND, Akintunde Sawyer. Good morning, and
Hello.
thanks for joining us.
Good morning. Thank you for having me in your studio.
Good to have you. Let's, just start, of course, with the part of the conversation that is most popular now, which is the exclusion of, the alleged exclusion of the Southeastern universities. Why are you not giving money to the Southeast?
So thank you for using the word allegation. It actually is an allegation. We're not excluding any part of this country from access to these loans. This is an equal opportunities project that seeks to attract people from every corner of this country. What has happened is that we have a process that we must follow. We are managing public funds first, and secondly, we can't force people to take loans. Thirdly, we need the cooperation of institutions for verification. So if you think about it, what we're doing, we've opened up a portal where there's no human intervention whatsoever. The portal doesn't know where you're from. Obviously, we capture some data around things like states of origin, but we don't use it for assessment. We use it to sort of ensure that we can track, that we're being an equal opportunities program. And essentially, when people approach the portal, if they apply for the loan, and if I fast track and say they become successful, we compile a list of those who have succeeded in getting the loan or having their loan approved, loan application approved. We send that list to the relevant institution for them to confirm that the list that indeed we are going to be, or the beneficiaries we're going to be paying on behalf of, are indeed their students. If we don't get a response, we are managing public funds. If we don't get a response, we don't disperse. It's that simple. Some parts of the country have been quicker at responding. Some institutions have been quicker at responding. This is completely agnostic. We don't interfere in that process.
Okay, so what has gone on in the Southeast? Is it, you've not received a response from the institutions, or you've not received requests at all from students in the Southeast?
So there are two issues here, or there are two things in that question. One is students from the Southeast study everywhere in the country.
Yeah, well.
So we have students from the Southeast in institutions in the North, in the Southwest.
Very true.
Southeastern students are all over the country. Some of them are beneficiaries of this. The real issue we have here is that the institutions need to confirm to us that actually the students are theirs. There's another issue that precedes that. The way the system works is that we expect uploads of students, regardless of whether they're applying for the loan or not, from all institutions. It's those uploads that we match with the applications to do the initial verification. So where institutions have delayed providing accurate and complete uploads to us, it's delayed the process of their students being able to apply. That's part of the issue. The second part is when they do apply and we send the information across to the institution's authorities to say, verify this list. Yeah. If they don't respond in time, then obviously we're not going to hold up other applications or other disbursements because some institutions haven't applied in time. It's a simple case of we will disburse on a first-come, first-served basis according to the timetable of the institution.
So what we're saying clearly in both situations is that it is the institutions from the Southeast in this case, because those from the Southeast are saying that they feel marginalized, but it is the institutions that are to blame. And if any institution cries foul, it's because they haven't stuck to the expectation, the procedure, the guideline laid down by NELFUND. That's what we're saying now.
Pretty much. Look, the institutions are not crying foul. There are other people who are crying foul. And of course, if you look at it very carefully, the students themselves aren't crying foul. Okay? It's certain pockets of people saying, look, we're not seeing the names of institutions from the Southeast. And they're correct. We've actually had some come through already. Since this whole brouhaha started. We've had some institutions verify and confirm. But up to the point where we released the last list, we hadn't. I would shy away from using the word blame because, I don't know the circumstances of these institutions. I don't know what manpower resources they have. I don't know what they're going through in terms of their experience and their processes within their institutions. So I wouldn't go for the word blame. I would just say that some institutions are more proactive than others. And the whole idea of this is to make sure that these funds get to every student, every youth that needs it. This is not a politicized exercise. We're not going to politicize this. The youth of this country need this money. They need this help. That's all we're interested in at NELFUND.
Right.
And basically, we can't force loans on people. The Southeastern students are applying for these loans, and they will get these loans if they're qualified and eligible.
I'm saying that we're having a bit of a challenge now, hopefully, with all the awareness that has been raised on social media and via this interview. We'll see more Southeast universities or Southeastern universities doing what they need to do to ensure that the students, are not cut out from this opportunity. But is there a way that we can maybe in the foreseeable future hold universities accountable? Because these students have a right to access these opportunities. Because if we keep saying that they're not doing what they're meant to do, and there's no guarantee that in the next month or two, I mean, yes, you said some have started to respond, but if I'm in a university, because we've seen students who have sent applications or sent screenshots of them being quote unquote verified, but their university, like you're saying now, hasn't done what they need to do. So is there a way, or is there something to look at in the foreseeable future, how we can hold universities accountable?
Sure. So look, one of the beautiful things about this scheme is that quite a lot of power has been put in the hands of the youth, in the hands of the student, in the hands of the applicants, because it is when they apply that money flows. And unfortunately, it doesn't flow to them if the universities or the institutions, because this is beyond universities, don't play ball. The truth about it is that over time, students, youth, applicants are going to start to realize that actually the buck stops with their institutions as far as providing the relevant information is concerned. The power actually is in their hands. The other thing I should say is that you're absolutely right. There is a way of holding institutions accountable, other than with the students holding their own institutions accountable. The other way is to work through the regulatory bodies. We're not a regulatory body. We can't tell institutions how to behave, when to behave, or what to do. There are regulatory bodies that put in place by government who can regulate this. Fortunately, some of those regulatory bodies are on our board, and we're going to be speaking to them about institutions that are not giving these students the opportunity to receive the benefit that President Bola Ahmed Tinubu has provided and put on the table for them.
Yeah. Some other thing, I mean, I think we're going to use the opportunity to really just speak on some of the biggest parts of the conversation, the Southeast and the allegations about it, of course, we started with that one. But another thing that we saw was the numbers for the University of Maiduguri, and people pointed out, that's staggering, more than 500 million naira being disbursed to the University of Maiduguri compared to the other universities. So, have you been able to? I saw an interview that you did on, another platform where you weren't really sure what had happened. That the North had gotten more requests than other parts. So, have you been able to figure that out? Why there seems to be more requests from northern Nigerian universities or students in those universities than from other parts of the country?
I think it's really more to do with how proactive the student unions, the student bodies within these institutions, the lecturers, the leadership of the institutions, and the general attitude of how needy the institutions might be. You need to remember that there are institutions in this country who have suffered greatly from students wanting to study, wanting to pay their fees, but being unable to do that. Some institutions have realized, they've cottoned on to the fact that there's a new player on the scene. And the institutions, recognizing that every student that applies for a loan, because it's going to be paid in full and on time, it's in the best interest of the university to help their students who are interested in applying for the loan to apply for it. Others have been a little bit slower in recognizing that this is actually a way of flowing funds, reliable funds, or flowing funds reliably to their institutions. So, it actually rests in the hands of those who run the institutions. Speaking specifically to the institutions in the North, some of them seem to have worked out that actually their students struggle to pay. So they've locked into this program very early on and organized themselves to be able to apply. We need that to happen in the Southwest. We need it to happen in the South-South. We need it to happen in the Southeast. It's essentially just taking ownership and saying, here are funds, the students are going to apply, let's help them do it. And some of these institutions and their union bodies have been able to help them, help their students do this. It's ultimately to the benefit, not just of the student, but of the institution itself, because they get paid regularly, on time, and in full.
All right. There was also a bit of controversy regarding the postponements that had happened before the, the scheme was launched. I think it was sometime in March. There was the initial postponement. There were those who interpreted, there was the interpretation of it being indefinite because, in an interview that you granted, there wasn't a set date for the resumption of the scheme. On the 14th of June as well, there was another announcement for the postponement for about, I think, 14 days. So can you share with us why these postponements occurred? And is there maybe some sense to why a number of Nigerians felt some type of way? Like there was a measure of distrust as to when they kept hearing it was being postponed. You just felt like, oh, it's business as usual. Is there a measure of sense to that? Can you maybe tell why Nigerians feel that sense of distrust, started to feel some level of distrust when they heard of the postponement?
I think I can. But let me start with the postponements that you talked about. This scheme was originally introduced and signed into law on the 12th of June 2023. There was quite a lot of criticism about the nature of that particular law. So it required people to have a guarantor. It required people to be earning less than a certain amount of money as a family per year. It just had all these sort of what I would call unintended booby traps that would make it difficult for people to apply. The president, in his wisdom, recognized this, and he pushed the bill forward back to the House for a repeal of that particular law and reenactment of a new law, which he then signed into law on the 3rd of April. Now, our job is to really receive applications and responsibly disperse funds to those who successfully apply. We spent quite a lot of time just looking at the process, looking at the technology, looking at the way in which this was going to work, because the first objective for us is to ensure that the funds get to the right people, the right students, in the right, doing the right things to get the application going for them. So the postponements that you saw were us just carrying out meticulous due diligence to ensure that the scheme is not defrauded or used in a way that could disadvantage the state, i.e. the state of Nigeria. And we just made sure that we ticked all the boxes. Now, going back to the latter half of your question around mistrust, of course there's mistrust. We've had 60 years, nearly 7 decades of promises made by various administrations for various things to happen. Some of those things have been put in place, but the implementation has been poor. So, of course, many Nigerians, particularly young Nigerians, who this scheme is for, feel that they've been promised and they've had their hearts broken so many times. What we're trying to do here is make sure that that doesn't happen this time. And with God's help, we will. We're just trying to ensure that this gets done right. And the mistrust is normal. It's natural in the sort of environment that we're in because, as I said, people have been let down so many times in so many different ways.
All right. Can you give us a picture of what your figures are like? Nigerians in higher institutions that you hope that the fund will be able to cover? What are the current average figures of these students, and how much does NELFUND currently have in its bank for them?
Okay, so as of this morning, we have had about 218,000 applications, successful applications that have come through to us. We've had about 304,000 registrations. These are people who have opened accounts with NELFUND with an intention of taking the loan. Our current exposure today, if we were to approve all of those 218,000 and pay out today, our current exposure or payment outbound would be 71 billion naira, which we have. The funds are there, we're ready to disburse, provided that the proper process of verification and authentication is followed. We've just received, the president just redirected from proceeds of crime another 50 billion, which has already been dispersed and we have received. So, we're exposed to 71 billion as we speak. That ties into 218,000 applications, which we have as of this morning. And we've got another 50 billion, and there are other funds to come. We want to be judicious about how we spend the funds. We want to try to make sure that everybody has the opportunity to apply for their share of this based on the criteria that we have provided.
Yeah, but do you have a picture of what the size is for almost every Nigerian student in all the higher institutions in the country?
Okay, when you say what the size is, what do you mean?
Like, are we talking about 2 million students, 5 million? Because
Oh.
now we have around 300,000 that you've mentioned now that have applied.
Okay. So we believe that there are somewhere between 1.2 and 2 million, 1.2 million and 2 million potential applicants. Remember that there are people who are looking at this scheme now. So today we have about 1.2 million who are automatically eligible if their credentials check out. But there are people looking at this scheme and making decisions about going back to do tertiary education. Yeah. We think about 2 million people, 2.5 million people, thereabouts, will join the tertiary institution space over the next year, 18 months or so. It could be longer than that. Depends on the capacity of the institutions, of course. Remember, we're also doing a vocational skills part to this. So again, the president asked that, look, it can't just be for the academics, that we've got to be able to provide those who have hand skills, other types of creative skills that can lend or add to the economy to be able to join in this. So
I'd like us to highlight on that a little more, because I think that with the tertiary education one, we have a sense of how the university or the tertiary institutions as well as the applicants can work together, but we don't have a clear picture as to how those who want to benefit from the vocational skills opportunities can apply and how they can be a part of this.
Sure. So currently, that is uncharted waters for many. So if I just go back to the current scheme that we're running, you need JAM, you need matric number, you need BVN, you need NIN. The people that we're talking about, on the whole, not in their entirety, on the whole, who are on the vocational side of this, are largely undocumented. So we have a lot of people who are not captured in this country in the financial inclusion space, for example, who may have a NIN but not a BVN, who may have, who certainly don't have JAM in most cases. So that area is going to require us to do quite a lot of work, and we've already started that work of being able to verify. Remember, this is a loan, and a loan has to be repaid at some point, and we need to be able to track the people that we're giving these loans to. So you're right to highlight it. There's a lot of groundwork that we're going to do. We're not going to be bullied or pushed into doing this just because people are in a hurry. We want to make sure that we protect public funds and that public funds are returned to the public or for the next set of people who want to come and join. But essentially, our issue is going to be around verification in that space, and then, of course, how we ensure that the centers that people are going to receive training in are adequate, are adequately equipped, are prepared. So there's a lot of conversation. There are far more stakeholders. It's a far more disorganized space. But we have the task of trying to organize it, and we believe that we will. We're working very hard in that direction.
The task that you have, does it also include retrieving your funds, from these people after they're done schooling? And do you have those worries? Because I know that, in the past we've had stories of people who got agricultural funding or, one loan or the other from the federal government and never paid back. The government was running into billions of naira, that didn't come back to it, that people took as loans. So do you have those worries as well, that people are going to take 200,000, 250,000, in student loans and disappear?
I personally don't have those worries, and the reason is very simple. The funds for these beneficiaries are paid direct to the institutions. Yeah. NELFUND is a government institution. The institutions themselves are government-owned. My main concern is to ensure that the funds that the institutions receive are used for the benefit of the students, primarily to ensure that they have unfettered access to classes, tutorials, seminars, anything that provides them with the learning opportunity they've come there for. That's an area that we need to ensure happens for the students. So that's one half of it. The other half is the stipend, which we pay directly to the students so that they have a monthly upkeep. Now, the way the scheme is set up is that they don't need to repay any amount of this loan. They're not obliged until 2 years after National Youth Service Corps. Now, the issue there is that if they don't have a job at any point after that 2 years, they are not obliged to pay. However, when they get a job, the employer is obliged to remit a certain amount of money, 10% of their salary effectively, to the fund. We're going to monitor this very closely. We'll have a register of loanees, and the employers will be obliged to check against their NIN who has a loan and who hasn't. And we'll
Or what
get
if they decide to leave the country? Because that's a trend we're seeing these days with young people deciding that they want to chart a new career path outside the country.
Yeah, it's interesting because, there are a couple of issues there. I could argue that people who are outside the country have more disposable income to pay their loans. The fact that people go outside the country doesn't mean they won't repay their loans. Whether they go outside the country or not, we're not sending anybody to arrest anybody. So whether they remain here or they go outside the country, the obligation, as I said, is not on them. We believe that, we have sufficient systems and agreements that will be in place to ensure that those who go to the countries that Nigerians normally go will find a situation, because of the agreements we will eventually reach with those countries and some of the employers in those countries, that if a certain individual has a loan with us, then there's an obligation for them to meet the responsibility of paying that loan back. So we're not really that worried about that, because we believe that we have sufficient checks in place to ensure that we get those funds
So I think
back.
my final question would be, is there still time for universities and individuals to apply for the fund? And yes, we've spoken about it, we've heard you speak about it on several platforms, but it's important that we reiterate the process for application for this loan. So is it still open to students as well as universities, and how can they apply for it?
Okay, so it's not so much open to universities, it's open to students.
So the universities that need to come for the verification.
Okay, all right. So let me so students make the application, okay? So just to run through the process, students approach NELF.gov.ng. When they get to that site, there are a number of things that they need to confirm. One, that they're Nigerian. 2, they have a BVN. 3, they have a matric number. 4, they have a JAMB number. That kind of allows them to go through the process. And at the other end, if we have the data from the institution, so just to reiterate, it's not just universities, colleges of education and polytechnics at the tertiary level. Once that handshake is made between the information they provide us with and the information that the institutions hopefully have uploaded complete and accurate, then we can actually say, yes, you can, we verify that, your loan is being looked at until we get to approval. The site is still open. We're not closing that site because we believe that many more people want to apply for this loan, and we have the funds. So it's still open for them to apply. The institutions, as you just pointed out, their role is not so much in the application, it's in the verification of the list that we send to them to say, are these people bona fide members, bona fide people who are in your institution, because we're about to pay money to you on their behalf, and we're about to pay money to them for their upkeep. So they just, that's completely open. We're sending messages, emails, documentation, verification documentation to institutions, tertiary institutions, almost daily, asking them to verify. We're entirely dependent on them as to when they respond.
Tell us a little bit more about the upkeep money. You're speaking about monthly upkeep?
Yes. So what we're doing is we're giving students, applicants who are successful in applying for this loan a monthly upkeep of 20,000 naira a month. Remember, we've taken the fees off the table. The institutional fees are off the table. And then we're giving them 20,000 naira a month for the year whilst they're in school, whilst they're in the institution, because the upkeep is tied to schooling, it's tied to studies, it's tied to their time in the institution. And we break it up into monthly pieces so that it doesn't become capital.
So about 240,000 a year per
That's
student?
It. Yes, 240,000 a year per
about
student.
$1 million naira for a 4-year course?
Precisely. But again, that's what we would estimate it to be today. Next year, we may review that figure.
Yeah. And does this money come monthly or it comes, in bulk?
It comes monthly. And for good reason. We want the students to be able, it's not that you can't trust people to manage funds themselves, but we want to make sure that they're interested in their studies and they continue to attend classes. We want to be a responsible lender. We don't want to just put money in the hands of people and say, come and pay us back. We want to do it in a way that's structured, that makes sense for them, that makes sense for the institution, that makes sense for the nation. That's what the president wants. That's
all right. I know I had said I had my last question was the last, but permit me to add another last. Do you feel a bit of pressure being the first, to handle this portfolio? It's a novel, it's a new introduction to Nigeria. So Nigerian students are excited about this. And right now it does seem like this administration has faced a lot of hiccup ever since it came to office, but this seems to be like a bright light. So do you feel a lot of pressure being able to, execute your duties and responsibilities, as well as meet the expectations of Nigerian students?
Yeah, I think it wouldn't be worth me being here if I'm not under pressure. Okay, we are in a situation in this country that whether you're the first, the second, or the third person to occupy a seat, we're so far behind in so many areas in this country that, as a leader, you have to feel the pressure. You have to be under pressure. Comfort and excellence cannot coexist. If you're comfortable, you cannot find excellence. You can't seek excellence. We have to continuously even if we're not being put under pressure, we have to put ourselves under pressure to get the best out of ourselves. That's the way the world works. You can't rest on your laurels and say, hey, look, I'm good, got everything I want now, I don't need to do anything else. Otherwise, one will be like a frog that's swimming in a boiling pot. You'll eventually get boiled. We have to continue to put ourselves under pressure. One thing I don't feel is stressed. I do not feel stressed. I feel under pressure, and I like the pressure.
All right. If you're going to make any adjustments, quickly, in 30 seconds, if you were going to make any adjustments to the whole process, what adjustments would you make? Because you already mentioned that you maybe have a review and up the upkeep money from 20,000 naira to maybe something higher. But are there any other ways that you've seen that you maybe need to tweak here and there to make the process more successful?
Not at this stage. I think the process we have is very good. We've got a lot of political will behind us that's making this, making this work well. You can't tell necessarily what's round the corner with anything. Maybe the only adjustment I'd make is to have a mirror that lets me know what's about to happen next. I don't know. Yeah. But as of today, we think we have an imperfect system. However, we're working hard to perfect it. And we also recognize that it will never be perfect because we're in a dynamic environment where things are changing all the time. I can't think of anything at this stage. However, this is a public forum, and I'd be very happy to take ideas and on what we can do better.
Feedback from the students as well.
Would you like if NELFUND also had a section where where people could fund or get funds for research?
We have other agencies in this country that are focused on research. I think part of the thing we've got to try not to do is to take on everything. Yeah. Okay? My job and our work at NELFUND is to provide people with the financial means to be able to get a better education and become the best that they can be. Research, I guess, is probably part of a degree course. There might be research in there, so when we've paid the institutional fees, there may be some component of research, but I don't think we should be troubling ourselves with trying to do research when there are other agencies and other areas of government. What I will tell you, though, is that we're very, very keen to ensure that when people get this loan, they can pay back. And the only way we can help them pay back is to help them find jobs. So we're very, very focused on finding ways of providing job opportunities for people who take these loans.
All right.
And we'll be making some
announcements. Sonia, the first managing director of the Nigerian Education Loan Fund, thank you so much for joining us and for shedding some light on some of the controversies and giving us clarity as to what this loan is about. We look forward to having you again.
Thank you for having me on your show. It's brilliant. And as I said earlier, I love your studio.
Thank you. Thank you very much. All right. We're going to quick break. And when we return from this break, it's Which Way Nigeria. Stay with us.
Ladies and gentlemen, as criticism begins to fade concerning the purchase of the new presidential jet, one thing that we must learn is that those in government seemingly rely mostly on the one-week rule, where Nigerians only criticize for 7 days on the average, and then they move on to other topics without getting answers from those in government. The lack of accountability from the executive is also strongly aided by the silence of state and national houses of assemblies, including those who claim to be in opposition party members. It is a good time to ask you, as the average Nigerian, why are you tired of asking these questions when you haven't gotten the answers that you seek? Did the National Assembly approve the spending of allegedly $100 million for a new jet? If no, how much was paid for this new jet and where did the money come from? Again, why are you tired of asking? Your votes brought these persons in government into power, So why are you tired of asking them these questions? As a reminder, time is ticking and another 4 years is going by. And as expected, politicians in Nigeria would get astronomically wealthier while Nigerians will remain the same, if not even poorer. So again, to the average Nigerian, why are you tired of asking these questions? And for those who try to emotionally blackmail Nigerians into feeling unpatriotic about questioning the purchase of the jet for Mr. President or for the presidency, making statements referring to the crash of the Malawian vice president's plane or the Iranian president, and also claiming Nigeria runs the risk of a civil war or total chaos if there's the unfortunate incident of a presidential plane crash. I say, all of that is nothing more than emotional blackmail to silence the legitimate criticism of mostly an irresponsible expense of Nigeria's money. An Airbus A330 aircraft isn't one of the things that will bring immediate succor to the millions of Nigerians struggling to find a meal to eat a day. The same government that has asked Nigerians to tighten their belts cannot be the same government that reportedly has money to spend $100 million on a new airplane. And also, the blackmail of crisis and chaos in Nigeria if a faulty jet leads, to an unfortunate circumstance for Mr. President. Let it be known that the only people imagining the president's plane crashes are those who are trying to blackmail Nigerians away from asking important questions about the purchase of this jet. Nobody is wishing Mr. President any ill. Nobody wants Mr. President's plane to crash. Nobody has ever mentioned anything about the plane crash, aside those who are looking for excuses to justify this expense. And these persons should be reminded that emotional blackmail will no longer work in Nigeria in 2024. It wouldn't work in stopping Nigerians from asking these questions. Nigerians are very much aware that the former aviation minister, Hadi Sirika, is supposedly still being investigated for alleged corruption allegations. And Nigeria still does not have a national carrier. But imagine for a minute that we had directed the money for this one airplane into achieving the Nigeria Air project that was bundled, of course, by the former minister. Imagine how much more effective the Nigerian Air Force will be with a $100 million investment into it to tackle insecurity. All counter-arguments are welcome, and that's fine. But what Nigerians do not want is emotional blackmail to silence criticism and asking questions. So again, Nigerians, if you have not gotten the answers that you seek, then why aren't you asking these questions repeatedly until you get those answers? Good morning, Nigerians.
Thank you for joining us on today's broadcast of Breakfast Central. We'll be back again same time, 7 a.m. to 9 a.m. every day of the week. My name is Olive Emodi, and I'll see you tomorrow.
And I am Osao Gilborn. See you
Bye-bye.